Good morning. Today I want to give an astrological timeline for February and March. We're a little bit into February already. We've gone through the first week, but nonetheless, I'll go back to the very beginning. Before I do that, though, I'll take another look at the inauguration chart for Donald Trump, and we'll see that many of the things I wrote about in early January with respect to that chart and the Trump administration, they have indeed come to pass, and often in some very dramatic ways. Now, in this presentation, I'll talk a little bit about the world, but I'll focus primarily upon America and Donald Trump. So let's see if I can share my screen. This will take just a second or two. And usually I have to get rid of some panels so I can see what I'm doing here. So just bear with me. Let's see, I think I have maybe one more to get rid of. Well, that looks probably good enough. So here we go. Timeline for February and March 2025. All right. As I said, I'll start with this inauguration chart set for January 20th, 2025 at 12 p.m. In the Constitution, that is when the new president takes the oath of office. And one of the striking things we see in this chart is this very close conjunction between Sun and Pluto in the 10th house of status, which suggests that this will be a presidency that will try and consolidate power in the executive branch. So I wrote in early January, this will likely be a powerful bellicose presidency that will seek to overpower others. And that has happened. I also wrote Neptune conjunct North Node in Pisces in the 12th house. Deception and disinformation and shady deals will probably intensify during this presidency. I think a lot of people would say that that has happened. They're looking at the ways in which this president is trying to grab power, the ways in which Elon Musk is being used. There's a lot of things which are questionable from a legal standpoint and are now being challenged in courts, but there seems to be a lot of underhanded or stuff of dubious legality going on. Uranus in the first house. I wrote, as promised, Trump's presidency will probably focus on disrupting existing norms and patterns. And boy, have we seen that happen at a rapid pace time and time again. Trump is using executive orders as a way to dictate to the country what will be done and as a way of bypassing congressional approval. That's the influence of Sun conjunct Pluto. And Uranus in the first house is really turning everything upside down in government these days and in our relationships with other countries. Let's see. Next, we have a T-square involving Moon, Chiron, and Mercury. I wrote in early January, wounding and self-undoing Chiron in 12th house will likely affect the public, Moon, foreign relations, Mercury in 9th house, finances, Mercury rules 2nd house, and workers, Mercury rules 6th house, and Mercury also rules commerce. Well, we have seen all of this happening in spades with the implementation of tariffs, the threat of tariffs, the attempts to shutter government agencies like USAID, and the threats to other countries to take over the Panama Canal, acquire Greenland, make Canada a 51st state. Some of the things that are being done without having thought about the economic consequences. We could go on, but this T-square is really being felt. Let's see, Mars in Cancer conjunct the cusp of the fourth house. People might feel angry or insecure over the next 4 years. Now, one thing which is happening, which resonates with having Mars representing military, conjunct the fourth house, which represents the people and the homeland. One thing that's happening that I hadn't thought about is that Trump has sent 10,000 U.S. troops to the southern border. And of course, a lot of people are being deported, people are angry, and they're feeling insecure. Now, there are also a few good things in this inauguration chart. And the question I always have is, these good aspects, they represent an easy path, something that's easy to accomplish. But will these good aspects be used to benefit the American people or to benefit Trump and his friends? Which way is it going to work? We don't know. But first, we have this mini grand trine involving Uranus, Saturn, Venus, and Mercury, with Saturn, Venus in the middle. And notice this, it's not too terribly strong at this point. It's somewhat of a weak sextile between Uranus and Saturn. Saturn has to do with structure, with Saturn in Pisces. This could be more dreams or plans of what you want to construct or infrastructure that you want to impact. Uranus is creativity and innovation, and being in Taurus, this could have to do with financial matters, financial disruption or innovation, changes of infrastructure, for better or for worse. But I draw this sextile to your attention because we're going to end the slideshow with this same sextile, which is going to become very strong in April. Anyway, Trump's plans to disrupt existing patterns in the government may indeed be partially successful and enhance its own status, while also improving the economy and foreign relations. This could ameliorate other negative indications for the economy, or simply improve his his personal finances. So, how the dice fall, we have to wait and see. Astrology creates influences, but people also have free will. And that's the part which is less predictable. Okay, we also have these two mini grand trines involving Mars, Uranus, Neptune, and Uranus, Neptune in the midheaven. Again, Trump's personal vision and plans to be a disruptor may meet with some approval from the people while enhancing his own status. But as before, the ultimate question is, will these easy paths of action be used to help the American people, or will they be used primarily by Trump to help himself? Okay. Also, this is something I've shown in some other slideshows, and it's very interesting. The outer chart is Trump's progress chart for 2025. The middle chart is Trump's natal chart. And the inner chart is the chart I use for America, which is a July 2nd, 1776 chart, because that is the date on which the Declaration of Independence was passed by the Continental Congress. On the 4th, it was printed up and disseminated to the public. I think both dates are valid. I just like the July 2nd date a little better, but what I'm going to point out here applies to both dates. And that is that Trump's progress Mars is at 14 degrees Libra. His natal Chiron is at 14 degrees Libra. And the USA Saturn is at 14 degrees Libra. Trump's Chiron being right on top of the USA Saturn, this has given him the potential to severely damage a lot of the structure of our democracy and our relationships with other countries. I see it as damaging these things. The supporters will see it simply as draining the swamp. But with his progressed Mars also at 14 degrees Libra, this damage or changes to the structure of America and its relationships with others, it's on steroids now. It's happening at lightning speed. It's really energized. Okay, so that is going to be in effect throughout this entire year and probably beyond. Now, let's get into the timeline. On February 2nd, 2025, transiting Mars is square the USA Chiron, and the very next day, it's going to be square transiting Chiron. When it comes to the masses, Chiron often manifests as wounding. Mars squaring that acts as a trigger, can cause some wounding, some violence. And what we saw at this time were tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China. Those on Mexico and Canada were later postponed for a month. We've seen the attempted closure of U.S. aid, the furlough of thousands of employees around the world, and Trump announcing that the USA will take control of Gaza and deport the Palestinians living there. You can imagine how that announcement was met by other countries in the Middle East, most of them at least. And the legality of this under international law is very questionable. On the 5th, we had transiting Saturn square Trump's Uranus. And consequently, lately, we have begun to see some pushback on Trump's policies. Uranus is in the 10th house, which has to do with his status. Saturn is causing some restrictions or frustrations for him at this time. Transiting Neptune conjunct transiting North Node. That is exact on February 7th, and February 7th is the day that I am making this video. Now, whenever a planet is conjunct the lunar nodal axis, its meaning is intensified. And the downside of Neptune in Pisces can be things like misinformation, disinformation, and fanaticism. So those can be intensified. But the upside can be an outpouring of compassion for others. The compassion that people normally have for others, that could be greatly intensified at this time. Okay, transiting Mars squared Trump's Jupiter. That will be exact on February 15th. Now, when you have a square between two planets, it means that they can't function together well in a coordinated manner. And we usually think of these planets as representing psychological drives within us. Mars is the drive to increase our level of activity. Jupiter is the drive to expand our horizons, to learn more, to grow, evolve. But they're not working together in a coordinated fashion. When this happens, it would not be uncommon for Trump to frequently overreach. He wants to grow and expand in certain ways, particularly his finances, his control of things. But during this period, he may constantly be overreaching and trying to do too much without having thought through what the consequences of his actions will be. And Mars, it's moving retrograde now. It's soon going to turn direct. That means that right now Mars is moving very slowly, and this aspect is actually going to be in effect for quite a while, for most of February through about mid-March. And it's going to be exact on the 15th of February and on the 4th of March. So this is going to be a pretty long period during which he is going to be trying to accomplish too much too quickly, frequently overreaching, frequently not thinking about legality or the various consequences of his actions. Now, on February 17th, transiting Chiron will be conjunct the USA Chiron. This is the third Chiron return about the past year. The first one happened, I think, on April 20th of 2024, shortly after that April 8th eclipse where Sun, Moon, and Chiron were all conjunct to the minute, and that made it rather a year of wounding for the world and a lot of people. Now, when the USA goes through Chiron returns, we usually get a lot of political wounding. Also, we tend to get some violence in the country, some mass shootings, or maybe uh, destruction and wounding through environmental events. And this third Chiron return, it is in effect from about mid-January almost through mid-March. It reaches a peak on February 17th. So we're going through a period right now where we're seeing a lot of political wounding, a lot of wounding to our democracy. Okay. Transiting Saturn square USA Mars, that is exact on February 21st. Now, the thing to understand about all the various 1776 charts for America is they have a pretty strong square between Neptune and Mars. And this leads to violence within the country or with other countries based upon fanaticism and misinformation or disinformation. So when Saturn is stimulating either Mars or Neptune in a tense way, it tends to activate this square. And with Saturn square Mars, we could get more violence, more aggression in the country, either verbally or physically. And it won't be long before this square is followed by the opposition of Saturn to natal Neptune. Okay. Mars will turn stationary direct on February 23rd at 17 degrees of Cancer. Mars is going to be moving pretty slowly at this time, so anyone with a planet at either 17 degrees Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn will be impacted by this. And of course, Trump is going to be one of those people impacted since he has Jupiter at 17 degrees of Libra. And we talked about how that could result in him jumping the gun on many things, consistently overreaching, speaking when he should remain silent. Now, on March 1st, transiting Venus is going to go stationary retrograde and will go stationary direct on April 12th. Now, let me point out that a lot of interesting things are going to be happening on March 1st. So that's going to be a kind of a day of tension, a day of activity astrologically. And the whole month of March is going to be very dynamic astrologically. In addition to everything else I talk about, we have two eclipses in March, a lunar eclipse in mid-March, followed by a solar eclipse at almost the end of March. Now, Venus is the pleasure principle, our drive to reduce tension. It also has to do with our nonverbal right brain, because as a result of the activity of Venus, we figure out what we like and what we don't like. And that sets our values for us, what we think of as good and what we think of as bad. When Venus goes retrograde, that means we're going to be reconsidering things during this period. We're going to be reconsidering our values and rethinking maybe what is actually good and what's actually bad. And during this retrograde period, let's see, I think in mid-March, Mercury is going to go retrograde and then not go stationary direct until April 7th. So that's going to be a period of about 3 weeks when we have both Mercury and Venus moving retrograde. And Mercury is our left brain. So both sides of our brain are going to be reevaluating things. People are going to be thinking, what do I think about this? And also asking themselves the question, how does this make me feel? Do I feel good about this? So there's going to be a lot of self-reflection and introspection going on in March. It begins on March 1st. Also on March 1st, we have transing Pluto making a sesquiquadrate to Trump's Uranus in the 10th house of status. And a sesquiquadrate is kind of a turning point or a breaking point. Oftentimes, nothing at all happens, but it's an increase in the level of tension, and sometimes it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back. Now, this could cause some disruption, some transformation to Trump's status, since Uranus rules his sixth house of health, also relationships, seventh house. Those areas of his life could be affected in a negative way. One of the worst possible cases would be that Trump could just go completely psychotic here. He could have a bipolar or manic depressive break. Some people think he's already gone crazy and that he is not viewing reality in a realistic way. But this is going to be a long-term influence that extends from February all the way through most of August. It's exact on March 1st, gets a little weaker in May, and that's exact again on July 12th. So this is going to be a long period in which you could be rather manic. We could actually see a psychotic break, or we may see some other change in his health or in his status as we go through this period. At the same time, on March 1st, transing Saturn is going to be square Trump's nodal axis. And that's going to be followed by a square to the moon and then by a square to the sun. And Saturn kind of restricts things. So with both Uranus and Saturn involved, that looks like a classic manic depressive break or bipolar break. Uranus overexcites, Saturn overly restricts and depresses things. And throughout a lot of March, beginning on March 1st, then Saturn squares the nodal axis, then the moon, and then the sun, Trump could feel more restricted and maybe more depressed. Okay, on March 4th, transiting Mars will square Trump's Jupiter again. We've already talked about that. And this period here that goes from February through mid-March, where he will tend to overreach most likely. It was exact on February 15th, it's exact again on March 4th. Also on March 4th, that's when we get to transiting Saturn square Trump's moon, so that could be depressing for him. He could feel very personally restricted by one thing or another. On March 8th, though, transiting Uranus will be semi-square Trump's Mercury, and that could excite his thoughts a little bit more. His actions could be a little bit more erratic, and his speech a little bit more just a jumbled stream of consciousness sort of thing. So keep an eye on his actions leading up to and on March 8th. And then on March 14th, we get that transiting Saturn in opposition to the USA Neptune. So this Neptune Mars square in the USA chart is being stimulated again, but this is going to be intensified by the lunar eclipse. And so if we look at this graph down here, we see second half of February through a lot of March. This can be a time characterized by some violence and misinformation, disinformation, delusional thinking, zealousness for this or that cause. And, violence, it could be aggression by people. We could also see some catastrophic events occurring. Crashes of things or environmental events that affect a lot of people. And we have the lunar eclipse on March 14th, and then this lunar eclipse, Sun will be conjunct Saturn in Pisces. This could create several months of scarcity within the world. Saturn is austerity, limitation of things. So just as 2024, I called it a year of wounding, 2025 in many ways could be a year of scarcity, particularly if we get into more and more trade wars with other countries. But there is something good happening at this lunar eclipse, and that is Uranus will be making a sextile and a trine to both Sun and the Moon. Uranus is in Taurus, which has to do more with financial things and possessions. So there may be some sort of innovation going on that helps the world out financially and makes people feel better. And then on the 15th, that is when Mercury goes stationary retrograde, remains so until April 7th. Venus is already stationary retrograde. So during about this 3-week period from March 15th through April 7th, that is going to be that time I mentioned when people will be questioning things, asking themselves, what do I think about this? How does this make me feel? They will be reevaluating things. On the 19th, that is when we get to transing Saturn square Trump's Sun, putting more restrictions on him. This one is intensified by the lunar eclipse. It will be fairly exact at the time of the lunar eclipse, exactly exact a few days later. But we have this period, this whole period from the beginning of March through the 19th, when Trump is going to be feeling a little bit more restricted. And then on March 19th, we have transing Mars square USA Chiron. We saw this happening already at the beginning of February. And Trump was taking a lot of actions that were wounding people and our relationships with other countries. So in the latter part of March, as transing Mars squares the USA Chiron, and then it squares transing Chiron, we can see some more of that. These would be periods of active wounding for both America and the world. On the 22nd, transing Uranus is conjunct Trump's midheaven. And this can bring about some change in status, either up or down. And it's going to be intensified by both the lunar and solar eclipses. Uranus is moving pretty slowly, so this aspect is in effect from mid-February all the way through mid-April. And this can also make him a little bit more manic, a little bit more excited and unpredictable in his actions. So the question is, how bad will things be? Are we just going to see his normal manic state, or will it venture or tip into a psychotic manic state? We'll see. On March 26th, that's when transiting Mars is square transiting Chiron. That's also intensified by the solar eclipse. And we've talked about this graph before, which shows the periods when Mars squares the USA Chiron, followed by its square to transiting Chiron. That could cause more active wounding in the world. Then on the 29th, we have a solar eclipse. And the thing I'm concerned about most in this solar eclipse is this close square between Mars and Chiron. So that is being intensified by the solar eclipse. It's pretty tight at this point, and that can cause some active wounding in the world. We also have a pretty strong sextile between Uranus and Saturn at this point, and that could be more beneficial. Some innovative changes in structure or infrastructure or plans for those changes could benefit the world financially. Of course, here I've highlighted that here. Now, another thing about the solar eclipse is this. On the left, I have the chart for the American Civil War. And notice at the start of the American Civil War on April 12th, 1861, Neptune was at 29 degrees 57 minutes of Pisces. Look at where Neptune is on the March 29th solar eclipse. It's at 29 degrees 58 minutes of Pisces, only 1 minute of arc away from where it was at the start of the American Civil War. And this is a very charged position for America. So what's likely in March is there may be more and more people who are dissatisfied with Trump and some of the things he is doing. People are going to be rethinking their positions. There will be pressure on Trump. He will feel actions taken to restrict or curb his excesses. And people may be feeling very volatile. Emotionally, there will be a zeal there, intensification of feelings at this point in time. Maybe a sense that this is a righteous cause they have to fight for. And of course, the very next day on the 30th, Neptune will move into Aries, just as it did the day following the start of the American Civil War. On April 9th, Neptune makes an exact square to natal Venus in this July 2nd, 1776 chart for America. That square is actually in effect from mid-March through mid-May, but this is another aspect that occurred at the start of the American Civil War, and this is going to be intensified by the solar eclipse. So people's values, their feelings about things are going to be intensified and become a little bit more fanatical as a result of this square from Neptune to Venus, which is really already in effect at the time of that end of March solar eclipse. But there's something good coming up in April, and I'm really interested to see what happens. Remember, I said at the beginning, when I was looking at the inauguration chart, that we would come back to this sextile. between Uranus and Saturn, and it's very strong on this particular day, April 9th, 2025, very strong in the first half of April. And the thing is Saturn is going to be making a trine to natal Mercury in the USA chart, a sextile to natal Moon, and Uranus is going to be making a trine to the natal Moon and a sextile to the natal Mercury. Okay, so Mercury, Uranus, Saturn, and Moon, they're going to be working together in a very, very well coordinated way, particularly in the first half of April. This could bring about a lot of innovation and changes in structure or plans for changes in structure or infrastructure that benefit the people and benefit the economy. Will this be due to Trump? Will it be due to other people? I don't know at this point. Things could go either way. But keep an eye out for the first half of April. Things will begin building by mid-March and won't completely fade until the end of April, but it's particularly strong in mid-April. And so look for some sort of inventiveness or innovation that helps out the American people and the American economy and trade. Okay, well, that is my last slide, so I will stop sharing at this point. Okay, and I'm back. So that's my astrological timeline for February and March. There are interesting things that are going to happen, interesting questions. Will Trump go so over the top that he just has a complete psychotic break? Or will he just be his usual, very erratic self? How much power will he grab for himself? How much will he wound both America and our relationships with countries abroad? And then March is going to be a very active month astrologically. As both Mercury and Venus go retrograde, people are going to be rethinking things and their positions on all sorts of things with both their left brains and their right brains. What do I think about it? How do I feel about it? And Trump is going to feel a little bit more restricted in March. And like I said, the extreme result would be a complete manic depressive break, bipolar break. But that would be the most extreme case. But he'll probably be very excitable nonetheless and feels frustrated at times. But when we get into April, there could be something very good and very interesting that happens for America that a lot of us will feel good about. And again, will Trump do something really good, or will it be other people who do something really good? We just have to wait and see. Nonetheless, the next couple of months will be quite a ride, and particularly March. That is where everything heats up and gets more intense, given that we have two eclipses at that time. So, interesting times lie ahead, but I hope everyone remains centered and does well, shows kindness to their neighbors, and does what they can to help us all get through these trying times and to make this world a better place. But for now, I'll just say so long and be well.